Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. Today, a throwback to 2006. That is the year South Florida jewelry and watch superpower East Coast Jewelry celebrated its 20th anniversary. Now, East Coast in South Florida at the time was a very, very big deal. So many horlogerie brands jumped at the opportunity to create special edition watches for the 2-decade milestone. And this, of course, is the Royal Oak Offshore Worth Avenue by Audemars Piguet. So this is the 26086ST, a full bracelet stainless steel Royal Oak Offshore 42 millimeters in diameter, a 100-piece limited edition. It is 14.2 millimeters thick from lug to lug if we're including just the case, 54.4, and if we include end link to end link, I'm going to use these intermediate plots, these little double intermediate links. The total rigid distance across the wrist is 57. So this is a big watch, and it's not the most common thing on earth to see a Royal Oak Offshore on a full bracelet. In general, we see them on straps, and let me just opine that one of the pleasures of getting them on the bracelet is that you wind up with a watch that preserves more of Gerald Genta's original concept behind the Royal Oak design. So throwing this on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, you could see how it's very much the Royal Oak on steroids. It's a watch that has that integration of case to lug to bracelet. And if there was one element lost in the transition from the Royal Oak to the Offshore in 1993, it was the fact that most of them came on straps. Here, you get all of that fine finish and decorated metalwork that you would expect on a traditional Royal Oak, meaning this is quite literally a much more handcrafted watch than a regular strap-clad Offshore. The watch is not as big as you would think, though I often advise people to think of these as 44 millimeter watches, these 42s, and I certainly advise you to continue viewing them as such. On my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, this is actually working just fine. Big is the look. It's not supposed to look small, but if your wrist is my size and kind of flat across the top like mine, you should find this fits perfectly well. The bracelet is a marvel, and the mass is incredible. I took the mass of this one before the video. It's over 250 grams. When I talk about integration, this is what I mean. I mean the case segues into lug, segues into bracelet. And this is one element that really helps to balance the watch both visibly and physically. So here's the visible part. Clean sweep from metal to metal. Here's the physical part. You've got a clasp and you've got a bracelet. And so if you like to wear your watch loose with this counterweight on the bottom, it's almost like the keel of a sailboat. It's going to prevent the top from trying to hula hoop over the edge of your wrist. So if you like to wear your watch loose, this is definitely the way to do it. Full bracelet. All removable links fixed by screws. So Audemars Piguet building bracelets the right way then and now. You can see that the bracelet is fixed to the case using screws and bars, which is a much more secure and premium option than spring bars. I love to see it. Taking a quick look here, you can see that everything's in excellent shape. The watch still retains full metal, sharp breaks between polish and satin, outstanding volume, definition, and symmetry. Even some of the small details, you can see that the micro beveling on the crown guard structure is still present. Is it perfect? No, you can see the little mark right there, but it's always preferable to have all the factory material than to polish it down to a toothpick in the name of making it look, quote, new. This is the way you want it. Of course, we have polymer shoulder on the crown, as well as caps on the chronograph pushers, old school Royal Oak Offshore. On the Offshore is an element that was only hinted at on the original Royal Oak, becomes a major styling feature. On the original Royal Oak, you could just barely see the bezel gasket. Here, it is designed as a styling element that stands out, making the watch appear more rugged. And indeed, with a screw-down crown and 100-meter water resistance, this is a rugged watch. It should be noted that because most Royal Oak Offshores are on hornback alligator straps, their theoretical water resistance doesn't come into play because you can't soak the leather. Here, you can jump in the water with this thing and enjoy it with abandon. Taking another look at something that matters to me and should matter to you if you're looking at a Royal Oak or an Offshore, look at the bolts, and they are bolts in the bezel. See how they're recessed just just below the plane of the bezel. That's how they're supposed to be. You never want to see these things even or standing proud of the bezel. On the dial side, we have the Mega Tapisserie, the hobnail in the largest size, in black, with East Coast jewelry specific signal yellow. We'll do a lume shot so you can get a sense of how this watch is loomed. And you can see quite well. One element I always liked about the Offshore is that though there is a magnifying lens for the date, it's inside the dial, so it doesn't stack up on the crystal itself. Outboard, there's a tachymetric scale, which can be used along with the chronograph to gauge the speed of an object, such as a race car across a kilometer. And then we have a set of setting modes, one of which is full hacking. That stops everything. Now you could set the watch to a reference time. If you only need to correct the date, there's a quick set for the date as well. Now, one of the worthwhile spotter's guide elements, we'll get to it in just a moment for a Royal Oak Offshore, but before we get there, let's take a look at the back. This is number 52 of 100. It's the Worth Avenue limited edition after East Coast Jewelry's flagship store at the time. That's where it was. You could see mid-F series back here, the underside of the bracelet, which is an impressive piece. You can see that the bracelet is locked down by a clamshell right there. But speaking of the movement, it's a modular movement, so people often wonder why on a traditional Offshore, not the new in-house calibers, not something like a 4401, but this is a JLC base with a Dubois-Dupraz chronograph module. So the JLC base actually sits under the chronograph module, so you stare deep and down at the date, which is on the base movement. Now, because this is a vertical clutch chronograph module from Dubois-Dupraz, there's no extraneous motion of the seconds hand when you start it up. A vertical clutch is seamless. The JLC movement is an upgrade over the original 889. So this is what you would call an 899. So the 889 was what you would have found on an original 1990s Offshore paired with a DD module. But what we're looking at here is actually a 2326 with the 2840 module. So the 2326 is a modernized version of the 889 called the 899. And it's a unidirectional winder with ceramic rotor bearings. It's got a free-sprung balance for better durability, and it has a reprofiled drivetrain to increase efficiency. It is a 38 to 40 hour power reserve. It has hacking, it has quick set. It features the vertical clutch for smooth engagement, 5-position adjustment, beats away at 4 Hertz. And because there is a chronograph module on top of the base caliber, if you look here, you can see that the module represented by the pushers, the center lines of the pushers slightly above the center line of the crown. So that's how you can always tell that's a modular movement in there. And that's been very reliable over the years. It's well regarded to have a JLC base and a Dubois-Dupraz module. Taking a quick look at the crown, you can see it features a shoulder that is hexagonal, which is similar to the bolts within the bezel, which is a rounded octagon, an element shared with the original Royal Oak. Back in the 1970s, it was inspired by a vintage diving helmet. Gerald Genta penned the first Royal Oak, and in 1993, the Offshore was to the credit of Emmanuel Guet. Emmanuel Guet was the son of Jean-Claude, who was a famous watch designer in the 70s and 80s. So a very cool design from a legacy of great watch designers. I should also mention that it takes 9 to 11 hours to hand finish this bracelet. So when you get the bracelet on the watch, you're getting tremendous additional arts and craft value in the timepiece. The human element, as I like to say. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.